This is the UB Football Podcast with Brad Ryder and Scott Wilson.
Three backs lined up behind the quarterback. It's 4th and 1. 48 seconds to go. Game on the line right here. Wolf hands to the running back. Nixon brought down short. Sean Dolak makes the play. The Bulls have a chance with 45 seconds to go. Buffalo's got the ball at the 35-yard line, 35 yards away from tying this up.
Are they measuring this?
They are measuring.
Nowhere close to that mark.
They are stretching the chains out, and
they're going to say first down. How is that possible? He was brought down way behind the line.
Well, at this point, Western Michigan's in the victory formation, and nothing is changing. And Western Michigan's going to take a knee, and they're going to take a win back to Kalamazoo, Michigan. Very confusing.
There's no replay. I can't see the play again?
See, ESPN hasn't even shown a replay, have they?
No. I saw a replay of them stretching the chains short of where they should have been, but I never have seen a replay of the actual play. That's nonsense, Paul. That's a ridiculous spot. The Bulls just got jobbed out of a half a yard, and it cost them the game.
Let's talk to Scott Wilson and Brad Ryder. Gentlemen, your initial thoughts on this tough 48-41 loss.
I'm trying to make this not my last broadcast with the things that are in my head that want to come out of my mouth. I've been doing radio things since 1997, and the first time I was on the air, if you would have asked me, what's the dumbest thing in football, what I would have said is the antiquated system of measuring first downs. That game just ended on a misuse of the worst part of football. The drive started with a fair catch. It's at the 25. In order to get a first down, you need to get to the 35. We don't need chains. We don't need people who are standing on the sidelines to be involved in it. What we watched was a running back get tackled by Sean Dolak short of the 35. Western Michigan offense left the field. UB defense left the field. Then they decided, hey, I know the ball needed to get to the 35, but what do you think would happen if we brought those people on the sidelines over here with orange sticks and measured it for no reason when we know where it needs to get? We did not get a single replay of the play itself. We did get a replay, however, of the measurement where the ball was short of the 35, and so was the stick. So yeah, that's what happened on Saturday. I'm Brad Ryder, joined by Scott Wilson. That was us on tape from the game and the post-game show. And it's time to start the podcast by reliving a little bit of that. We'll pick things up. We'll talk about the rest of the game. There's a lot to discuss. What a game it was. But we are several days removed, and all I keep thinking about is how stupid the ending of that football game was and how I want to see the last 45 seconds play out the way that they're supposed to.
100% with you. Nonsense. Still think it's nonsense. I have since seen the play on replay. Still disagree with the spot of the ball. Even with the spot of the ball, they're still not at the 35-yard line. The chain is still short of the 35-yard line for some reason. There's no way that was a first down from Western Michigan. They skated by. They escaped. They got away with one there, because then it's 1st and 10 at the 35-yard line, at the 34.5-yard line for the Bulls, who have been scoring at will basically for the second half, and 45 seconds, which was plenty of time for the Bulls to get into the end zone and tie that one up. And to be honest, even though they were at home, I wouldn't have been surprised if they had tied it and gone for two, because of the momentum being so strongly in their favor. It's just nonsense. It was just complete nonsense. The fact that we got to that point of the game and they're not buzzing it to take a look at it seems ridiculous. I will give them a pass if they're saying up in the booth, we could look at this again, but this is a ESPN Plus MAC game and we don't have a shot down the line. If this was a CBS noon game, we might have that truck on the sideline that goes back and forth where we might have a different angle, but we don't. We've got an end zone camera and then 3 or 4 up in the seats, and that's it. And there's no way that we're going to definitively move that back. So tough. I mean, that's a tough break. And I'm with you. And the rest of the really nice crowd for homecoming on a beautiful day that was juiced and was excited and, basically got screwed out of seeing the end of an exciting end of a game by just numerous little ridiculous paper cuts of bad officiating, I guess is what you want to call it. And Western ends up escaping. So that's my view is from just a fan and whatever perspective. From an actual analytical perspective of looking at the game, the Bulls didn't lose the game on that play. Coach Limbo said that after the game, that nothing's ever going to actually usually come down to one play. And I don't think this game did either. So there's a lot of little mistakes that the Bulls made that cost them what was by far their best offensive performance of the season and added up so that something like that could happen, so that they could get jobbed by a quarter of an inch or whatever it was. That was the difference in the game.
I'm going to dwell on this a little bit, and then we'll move on. The thing that it reminds me of the most in Buffalo sports history is the no goal in the 99 Stanley Cup Finals. In that, no, the Sabres wouldn't have won if the goal didn't count. But could we get everybody off the ice and put the cup away? Because we're not done, because this is wrong. And you're just watching, going, hands up in the air in a shrugging gesture, saying, oh, can we wait, stop it. You can't, it didn't end. It's not over. But it was over, and it shouldn't have been over. And that will never be right, the no goal thing in 99. The truth is, the Sabres needed that goal wiped off. Then they needed to score. Then they needed to go win Game 7 to win the Stanley Cup. So, no, we can't blame all of it on that one little thing. But I needed that one little thing to keep things alive, and it's super obvious that it should have been, the call should have gone the other way. The ball didn't get to the line. And there's a chance, when you look at the screenshot of the replay of the measurement, there's a chance that optics are playing tricks on you because, like you're saying, the angles, you don't know for sure if the tip of the ball maybe is somehow hovering over the 35, which I don't think it was, or I wouldn't have thought it was. But I know for sure that it wasn't because they put a stick on the ground, and that was short. So what you're telling me is that you've got these orange things over there that are supposed to stretch 10 yards, and they didn't stretch 10 yards because you obviously either didn't start from where you're supposed to start, which is the 25. A 10-yard measurement from the 25 every time is going to hit the 35. I'm pretty sure they got the measurements right when they built the field and painted the lines on the field, so I'm going to trust those. But something malfunctioned with the stick process, which is a process I hate anyway. So now it's like the worst thing in football is being used to ignore what is obvious, that the ball needed to get to the 35-yard line. That stick being on the ground in the photo, short, shows me that measurement is invalid. Even if the ball did reach the 35, that stick didn't show it, didn't prove it. So that's my frustration, is the system sucks, and they displayed how poorly or how badly the system sucks. And then that was the call that counted, and that's what essentially ended the game for the Bulls. So that's where I am. 551 yards of offense, highest total of the year, highest since playing Wagner back in 2021 when they had 569. We have spent much of this year saying defense is doing its job. We just need a little more out of the offense. This time around, the offense came to play, and it lit up Western. But the defense didn't have its best day, obviously, and it was a fun game. It was a great MAC game. I loved the whole thing. It was a lot of fun. Bulls were down, 28-10, got themselves right back in it, could have cut it to 3, but didn't convert. So now you're at 35-30, and then it was just a whirlwind of activity. A lot of fun, full-blown action on a Saturday. But when all is said and done, I came away optimistic about the offense, and with a few more questions about the defense than I would have thought that I had going in.
Yeah, I mean, the offense was great. And really, one thing that I have come away from, my first instinct of thinking about that game is, with the new format in the conference and there's no divisions, I would love to play Western Michigan again in Detroit. I would love to get another piece of the Broncos because there was that was fun. There's a little bit of juice on it because of the way the game ended. But then, more importantly, I think that's a winnable game. And it was. And you're right. The defense, here has given up a lot of rushing yards 2 of the last 3 weeks. And the Toledo game where they didn't, it was without Toledo's top 2 running backs. So they were a little bit hampered in that regard more than they normally are. And ever since Wallow went out, it feels like that rush defense has been a little bit different and hasn't necessarily been as stout. And we knew how good of a player he was, but I think that's having an effect. And if you look at the stats, if you take the first 4 games and then the last 3 games, they've almost run for as much in the last 3 games as they did the first 4 games combined. And the average per game is way up from since when Wallow left the lineup with his injury. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on and, keep a good watch on, especially coming up this week against a physical team that has to run the ball. And I'm okay, I think, with the pass defense. They were okay. They were exploited in the first half. Western found a nice little loophole there with being able to get the tight end out in the flat. And their tight end scored 3 first-half touchdowns. Didn't do anything in the second half, so the Bulls adjusted, and they made the right movements. And I thought the Bulls' defense was significantly improved in the second half.
For sure.
But still, the first half happened, and that was a lot. There was a lot going on there and very little resistance. And there was a period of time from after the first drive where Western went touchdown, 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 touchdown. And it was like, whoa,
Yeah.
What is going on? And it was shocking at how good the defense has been this year to see that happen. And, credit the offense. They knew, during a season, you can't have stifling defense every game. Like, it's the Bears defense back in
85.
the 80s. Yeah, the 85 Bears. I mean, the Dolphins got them. Like, they had one bad game, and the Dolphins got them. And, everybody's going to have an off game, and in those games, you need your offense to step up. And they did. You score 41 points, you get CJ throwing for 300 yards, you think you're going to win that game with that defense. But, credit to Western. They had a great game plan in the first half and kind of put the game on tilt early, and the Bulls were fighting back ever since. And it ended up just being too much. They just kind of ran out of gas because they had to make up so much ground.
But what was it, 10-7 when the Jalen McNair BS targeting thing happened? Should have given the ball back to the Bulls, and instead it was first down, and that's when the barrage of touchdowns began.
Yeah, it was 10-7, and then the Bulls, if you remember, get stopped on 4th and 1 at about the 39-yard line of Western. Because they had an opportunity to really drive home the game. They had a chance to go up 17-7 like 7 minutes into the game. They get stopped on the 4th and 1, and then Jalen McNair goes out with the targeting penalty, which would have set up a 4th down, and the Bulls would have gotten the ball back. And next thing you know, it's 21-10. The Bulls are fumbling another kickoff. Short field, then it's 28-10, and you're like, whoa, the game got tilted on its axis very, very quickly. And the offense recouped. They came back, they fought, and we saw a lot of stuff out of the offense and a lot of confidence out of Agbana that we haven't seen.
Yeah, that's the next thing I wanted to ask you is what did you?
That's what I'm encouraged by.
Yeah, where did that come from? What was different? Like, again, analyst guy, obviously the point total, the yardage total, but what did you see that worked so well for the Bulls offense that remarkably better than anything that we've seen over the course of this season so far. Obviously, getting some of the little guys involved. Messiah Birch had a great game. Victor Snow had a great game, and they were contributing as the Bulls are still, adapting to life without an offense that at least a passing game that we think was going to revolve around Nick McMillan, who they had for one game and then lost him for the year. What was different and what made things work on the offensive side of the ball for the Bulls?
Well, you saw them. I think they found a little thing. Well, let's just start with this. Western's defense is one of the worst defenses that they've faced in quite some time. I mean, they faced an FCS team in Lafayette and then went top 10 Missouri. UMass wasn't that good.
Yeah, Northern, UConn.
UConn,
Toledo. Yeah.
Toledo. I mean, those are good teams. Those are good defenses. And Western's a good team. They've got some nice players. Their defense is nowhere near what a majority of the other teams are that the Bulls have faced. And if you go back to the, UMass and Lafayette, they scored over 30. Like, they were scoring points. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't massive yardage, but, they were scoring over 30. You're going to win the game. And I think that they found a little bit of momentum just formationally, where a lot of times in the second half they were going four wide, and whether that be four wide with four wide receivers or four wide with a tight end split out there, and every now and then they'd run a swing pass to LJ. They'd have a tight end lead blocking basically for them just by formation. And then also I think with Messiah Birch, he gives you an option that, if you're a defensive coordinator and you're looking at the offense, when they're in the huddle or they're setting up, you're looking to see what the personnel is. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what defensive coordinators start considering Birch. Are you going to consider him a running back and maybe put a heavier lineup on the field or a linebacker? Or are you going to consider him a wide receiver? Because he can do both. And they line him up at both. And it's kind of one of those things where he's faster than your beefy guy. But if you put on someone smaller, I've also got other running backs that can come in and start hammering you. So it can put them in a quandary. Birch is a player that the Bulls is the type of player that the Bulls I don't think have ever had. And Victor Snow is in that same category, but with the Nick McMillan injury, I think his main focus has been more specifically wide receiver and slot because they have to have that threat out there. He's the fastest guy out there. He could definitely do some of the same stuff, but Birch is kind of that Deebo Samuel light type of thing that they can do with him where he can run the ball. He can operate out of the slot. You could run a screen pass to him. They've run triple option with him. They've run wheel routes with him. And how does a team try to match up against that? And then once they do, if the Bulls are going full house backfield and running that inverted bone and they get the matchup they want, they can motion them out, get a guy out of the box, and then power forward the other way. Like, they can do so much with such a versatile piece like that. And with him and Snow, they've, we saw last week, the mix-up, the add-in this week was some of the end-arounds, some of the reverses, some of the, the misdirection stuff. And now they've got two speedy elements to go both ways. And it caught Western off guard. And then when you're so worried about outside and LJ is starting to pick up steam, you get to the fourth quarter and LJ can rip one up the middle for 65 yards and a touchdown. And how about him reaching 21 miles an hour, according to the analytics?
I didn't see that. That's great.
Yeah, on that run. He was scooting. He was moving. So all that put together, it can put defenses in a quandary. And that spread formation, when you spread a defense out, it kind of makes the defense declare a little bit earlier and a little bit easier to read what they're doing. And I think that CJ was able to kind of comfortably pick up on what Western was doing and felt comfortable and confident where he was going to have to go with the ball. And he delivered. He put it on a dime, and they were able to to move the chains. And when they're able to move the chains like that and give the defense a rest, obviously take that game out. But 9 times out of 10, as we're coming down the stretch, the defense is going to be able to hold up, and that's going to be a very, very good thing for the team overall.
21 miles an hour, only beaten on the day by the speed with which the officials left after the fourth down call.
That's right.
Messiah Birch, I want to just throw out there 2 things. One, I feel like 2-3 times, twice a year, let's say, in the last however many years we've been doing these games, we get into the pregame show, and you describe to all of us, watch out for this guy on Northern Illinois or this guy on Kent State because he can do a little bit of everything. And everything you just described about Messiah Birch it's a prototype of a player that has been painful and difficult to deal with,
killing us
over the course of every season. There are a couple of those guys, and I don't remember the Bulls ever having one. And the other thing about Messiah Birch, I think the first time Messiah Birch was mentioned on the podcast this year was me saying, I don't know how accurate this College Football 25 video game is, but I'm telling you, in like 2 years, you're going to need to watch out for Messiah Birch because this guy does everything in the video game for me. We're only 6 weeks removed from that, so we don't even need to fast forward into 2026 or whatever it was where I started seeing results from him. They're showing up now, and it's intriguing to me. And the video game, even going back to the oldest, the previous releases and back in 04, whatever, told me a lot about college players to watch out for. And it gave me a hint about Birch. So I just throwing it out there. I think I mentioned this as something to watch out for. I just thought it would come 2 years from now. And here we are. We're heading into Athens. Go ahead.
Let me just add in here. John Fuller and myself for years have been asking for this type of player and hoping for this type of player, and we always have said Dree Archer.
That's who I was thinking too, yeah.
From Kent State. Like, hey, when do we find our Dree Archer? Now, listen, Kent State is still shell-shocked from the fact that we have Starks and Patterson and Bo. Like, we've got real hardcore running backs. But we've never had I don't want to call him a gadget guy, but
a burner like that. Yeah.
Like a burner like that could go between the tackles, which he did a couple of times this week. Jet sweeps, catch a little bit, screen passes, speedy dude that really is super annoying for a defense to have to keep track of. And it's that Dree Archer type that Kent had. And by the way, Kent rode for his best season, rode him to the MAC championship game. And I think that the Bulls have kind of found a little bit of that. I mean, we're only 6 games into him playing, but he gives a little bit of that look for the Bulls, and it's given a little bit of diversity to the offense.
Former Buffalo Bill, Dree Archer, wasn't he? Remember he got...
I think cup of coffee guy.
Yeah. I don't think he showed up. I think he retired from football rather than... reporting to Orchard Park.
He got drafted by the Steelers.
He got claimed on waivers, I think, by the Bills, and then never showed up, and then that was the end.
He returned kicks a little bit I'm pretty sure for the Steelers.
Yeah, I think the Steelers right, but I remember there was something where he was coming to the Bills, and he's like, "No, I'm not," and that was the last. That was the last we heard from Dree Archer. All right, let's move forward into. The hell that is Peden Stadium. We're getting set to head to Ohio. Here is the text that Scott Wilson sent out to our little text group here. It says, we've played in Athens, Ohio 6 times since we last won in 08. The average score has been 40-18. They've outscored us 240-106. Our turnover margin is -12. They've outgained us by 828 yards. That's 138 yards a game. We've had 20 turnovers to their 8. Looking back, it's astonishing at how thoroughly our 18 team got crushed, and also that our 2012 team, lost a game they dominated based purely on special teams and fumbles. What goes wrong every single time we travel to Athens, Ohio?
It sucks there. I hate it there. It sucks. It sucks there. But it's turnovers. It really is turnovers. And then, Ohio, it's not just us, by the way. It's like Ohio is damn near unbeatable at home. Period.
All right, I'll go back to the other text you sent. The last time each MAC team won at Ohio, Miami won in 23, Toledo, Kent, and Central won in 22. Western hasn't won there since 2019. Northern since 2019. Eastern since 2016. BG since 2014. Ball State since 2011. Us since 08. Akron since 04. That's from John Fuller, actually. Ugly. Not John, but the numbers. John's a good-looking man.
He's a beautiful man. If you look at the last 10 years, they're 40-16 at home. I mean, it's a tough place to play. It's just there's no hotels there unless you go and play weekday, and then you stay at the one that's across the street from the stadium.
There's one hotel there, and it's great because we can walk to the stadium from it. But if we don't get that hotel, which we don't have because it's a Saturday game, we stay in Columbus, which is a solid hour-and-a-half drive, and it's a noon kick, which means our bus is at 8:20 in the morning.
Right. And they play really well at home. It's just hard to get there. Like, even if you're staying across the street at the University Inn there, you still have to fly into Parkersburg, which is in West Virginia, and then you're still busing for an hour from the plane, if not a little bit more. And it's just they play really well. They usually get pretty good crowds, and you know what? They've been really good for a really long time. That is a factor. They're really, really good, and they're coming off back-to-back 10-win seasons. Where they've won bowl games. I mean, it's a good program, and it's been a good program since Frank Solich showed up. And normally the Bulls traditionally have played there on some sort of ceremony day, whether it be homecoming, which it's not homecoming. But I think that this time they are doing something with Frank Solich. So I'm not positive on it. I feel like Paul has said to me something along the lines of they're officially giving the field to, like, dedicating the field to Frank Solich. They're doing something this weekend, or they're having their blackout game, or they're honoring some historical team for them. Like, we're always there on some big thing where they
some kind of party
really
where we're
up.
the jerks. Yeah,
right, where we're the jerks that are invited. And, we end up walking into a buzzsaw. And that, combined with the fact that they're really good, has gotten to us. But overall, the number one thing is the turnovers. It's turnovers. You can't play 6 games and be minus 12. I mean, they're just getting killed. They're giving the ball up and not getting it back. And not only that, they're giving it up to a really good team that's cashing it in and wearing down your defense. And then you get into the third and fourth quarter, and they're just pounding on you even more. And it's tough. Now, this year's Ohio team is a little bit different. And if you look at their squad, they, by far, are one of the hardest hit teams in the country to graduation/portal, but portal especially. Their quarterback is now on a top 15 Indiana undefeated team hosting game day. Their running back, their backup quarterback went to Cal. Their running back now is at Minnesota. They lost 3 offensive starters. They lost all 6 of their top receivers. They lost their offensive coordinator. 9 of the top 12 tacklers are gone, including Thompson and Houston, who were nightmares for years against the Bulls. They were awesome linebackers that the Bulls won't at least have to contend with anymore. And they got a new defensive coordinator. And so, it's a bit of a different situation. And it's a almost totally new team, and they're keeping it together. They're very competitive. I mean, they're right there. They have the same MAC record as the Bulls. But it's not the same cohesive team that we've seen them have, where they've got, a 2 deep of guys that have been there for 4 years together. And they have that depth that they can really hurt you. I mean, Sam Wiglis, how many times did we say his name the last 2 years? Gone. It's not there. They don't have the big wide receiver talent that they've had. They've usually always got one guy. And then last week in the third quarter against Miami, Tyus, their lead running back and the leading running back at the time in the MAC, got his left ankle rolled up on, and as of what I'm seeing here when we're recording this on Wednesday, their coach has said he will be out for an extended period of time. So their number one running back is out. They still have Ricky Hunt, who is a name that we're familiar with. He's a good running back. Had a real good bowl game, over 100 yards. But he's not the bell cow of Tyus that they've been given the ball to 26 times a game, and who has been leading the conference basically since the start of the season in rushing. So that's a plus. The Ohio quarterback, Parker Navarro, is another in the long line and lineage, and I mean this with the utmost respect, of the most annoying possible quarterbacks that you can find in America. With the Rourkes, Nathan especially, who was just so annoying. And Navarro is right in there as well with, he's just slippery. You know, he's 6 foot, 200, 210, but he's speedy and he can get to the outside, and it doesn't look like he's going to get to there. And then all of a sudden he's down the sideline and you're like, oh no. And he can maneuver in the pocket, and he's good in the run game. Quarterback draws. They let you get upfield, and then all of a sudden everything parts, and he's just waltzing up the middle for an easy 15 yards. He's ripped off long 50-yard runs in the season. He's really dangerous. And for whatever he lacks in the passing game, which is average, and they're still kind of building that up, he definitely makes up for in the running game. Not having the leading rusher there, I think, is a big advantage. So the Bulls can pay a little bit more attention to now what is their leading rusher in the quarterback. But like I used to say with Nathan Rourke, if you can get the ball out of his hands, if you can force the issue to say, on these zone read plays, hand the ball off. And if we can't handle the running back, that's on us. But we're not going to let you sneak out the backside, which is what he's done a lot this year, and just go wild. The other thing I would probably anticipate seeing a little bit more zone from the Bulls in this game, just because man to man, you're turning your back, and that's he can rip you up if he gets out of the pocket that way. So, it's a physical contest, and this is a huge, huge game for the race to Detroit, because one of these two teams is going to have 2 losses. But more importantly, Ohio doesn't have BG or Northern on the schedule this year. So they're missing 2 of the 4 best teams in the conference. And so those losses aren't coming up, or possible losses aren't coming up. And you don't want to give Ohio the ability to have that tiebreaker over you. The Bulls can come in here, if they can do what they haven't done in a generation, basically, and win down there, they can have the tiebreaker over Ohio. They can keep themselves at the top of the table, and they can turn the corner here down the home stretch, where they've gone from Northern, who was expected to be in the championship game, Toledo, who was expected to be in the championship game, Western, who is leading the conference and is the only undefeated MAC team left, and then Ohio, who is back-to-back 10-win teams coming in and always a perennial contender to go to Detroit. The rest of the schedule gets easier from there. And none of the games are gimmies, because none of the teams are great, and none of the teams in the conference are really bad other than Kent State. Everybody's pretty good. But still, much easier than that road of 4 teams to start your conference slate from here on out. So this one is a massive, massive game for the standings.
We're used to UB against Ohio being a massive game for the standings, but formerly in the old format, it was all about the East. Here, through what UB has done in their last 3 MAC games, or their first 3 MAC games, however you want, in their 3 MAC games, They have put themselves ahead of Northern. They have put themselves ahead of Toledo. They have allowed themselves to fall behind Western. And now either one of these teams, UB or Ohio, is in the driver's seat to meet Western with a win and is really in trouble to get to Detroit with a loss because you're not going to be able to play this one back. These two teams are battling for the same thing. They have identical conference records. They have identical overall records. They're the same team right now. I wish this game was being played in Western New York. It is not. But this jumps ahead, and this is, standard. This is what you hear from coaches all the time. This is the new biggest game of the year. And it's in a place that has been very difficult and circumstances that are very difficult to deal with when it comes to the travel and the time of the game and all of that kind of stuff. But the one thing that I do like is I feel like since '08, which is when I started doing games, and you did too. I mean, you weren't traveling yet, but since we've been like actively a part of this UB broadcast team, the thing that Ohio has brought the entire time was that it was the most stable team of any in the MAC, and a lot of that had to do with the commitment of Frank Solich to come in there as a little bit of an older coach and settle down and not be looking for his next job. They have been an enviable program and one that I think you want to emulate. And I think the Bulls started doing that a little bit with Lance Leipold and even surpassed it. But I think they're on track to do the same type of thing with Pete Lembo. Stability is the word that comes to mind when thinking about what Ohio has been and what I want UB to be. And they can really get that whole stability train rolling by going in and working to beat this Ohio team that's always tough to beat in Athens.
Right. I mean, not only did they have Solich for a long time, but they had the same coordinators for the whole time, basically. And finally, we're seeing a little bit of turnover there. I know their defensive coordinator went to Memphis, I believe. So, and they've got a new offensive play caller. So, we're seeing some of that. And yeah, you're right. When you can provide that stability, it gives players a little bit more comfort in staying there. Now, that Solich era didn't happen when, during that Solich era, he wouldn't have a running back taking $100K to go to Minnesota. That just wasn't happening at that time. So a little bit of a different situation now, but no, you're right. I mean, the stability is what you want and you crave for. And, when Lance was here, he had the same OC in DC the whole time. And they did nothing but win more and more and more every year. And, that's kind of what the Bulls are going for again here with Coach Lembo and some of the coaches that he's put in place who are obviously pretty good. They're getting the job done. And, Joe Bowen, the defensive coordinator, going to be very familiar. He's coming from that Miami, Ohio system, and he was, I believe, their linebackers coach last year or the last couple of seasons. And he's coming in here with a great familiarity of the MAC and especially MAC East teams. And I'm not sure at the level of which you can take from last week's game, but the defense that he used to coach on played him last week. So I wonder if there's any type of added nuggets that he could take away from last week's game and what Miami did, because Miami really dominated that game. I know that the game ended up 30-20, something like that. It was 30-6 with 5 minutes to go. So the Miami defense really dominated that game. And I wonder if there isn't some nuggets or some information that a coach that's familiar with that defense and also familiar with the opponent coming up can also take from those two things together to help the defense get back on track. And I would assume that they're going to. Every time that this team has kind of had a, show us who you are. Like a show us who you are moment or a game. They've showed up. They've played hard, and they've done it all year. And just hearing also from some of the people that were down in or near the locker room after the last game and the way that ended and the disappointment, I don't think that there was a whole lot of tears. It was more anger and more focus coming out of that locker room saying, like, that sucked. Everything we want to do is still there.
Yep.
And we need to refocus, and we need to come back together and get it right, because when we get it right, we can win against anybody that's left on the schedule. So, that's kind of what I'm taking from it. I don't expect a lot of carryover emotionally from a tough loss last week to this week, because I think that there's enough guys in that locker room, especially guys like Dolak, that say, listen, that sucked. Whatever. We turn this around. We win out. We're going to Detroit. It's not a problem. Not a problem. Let's learn from it, but let's not let Western beat us twice. And luckily, a team like Ohio, where the Bulls have enough of a back and forth, I don't want to call it rivalry, because I know Ohio has other rivals, but for us it is, because we never win there. We hate it.
Yep.
And we hate Ohio. And all the games, if you look back, well, most of the games are really close. They're pretty close games. Even when the Bulls were winning all those games at home, they were pretty close games. And some of those games that turned into blowouts were fairly close for at least a half. So, and then things kind of got away from the Bulls. So, it's going to be another tough physical test. Ohio's got to run the ball, and the Bulls have to find a way to stop it after what happened last week. Too many easy runs for Western last week.
All right, man. I will see you in Athens. Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
I don't know about you guys, but I just want to get the hell out of here.